Welcome back to Close Up. Granite Staters in polls and in WMUR Voter Voices focus groups have told us affordable housing is the #1 issue facing New Hampshire. The solutions, officials tell us, are not easy to come by and will certainly take time. At the State House, there will be dozens of bills considered in 2024 to try to address the problem, but this is a local issue as well. WMUR's Steve Bottari sat down with Rob Dappis, the Executive Director of New Hampshire Housing.
Rob, thanks for joining us here today. So I wanted to start with this because it's really something I've never seen before. On a recent UNH Survey Center poll, this was back in August, New Hampshire voters actually ranked affordable housing as the #1 issue in the state. It ranked higher than jobs or education, health care, taxes. What does that tell you about, as we look at the situation right now here in the Granite State, where we're at?
Well, we've had a housing crisis, a mismatch between supply and demand for over a decade, and I think what that poll tells you and the sort of increased activity in the legislature is just that that's touching more and more people. And so a lot of people have been aware of it, but it becomes more personal when you or somebody that you know or love is struggling to find a place to live where they can afford it and it's safe and decent and stable.
Yeah, you mentioned the two words I hear often, crisis, and then also this mismatch, this misalignment. Whether it's in polls or talking to folks, it seems like this might be an oversimplification, but just at every single level, the market and where people are at are two different places. For instance, empty nesters are now stuck in 4-bedroom homes they no longer need because they can't move or don't want to move because of interest rates. Then you have families that are growing, not able to get into those homes, and then folks trying to get into the starter homes, stuck renting. It just seems at every level there is this massive mismatch between where people are at in their life and where people should be in terms of their housing. Is there one section that's easier to deal with than the other? Is it the rental market versus the single family housing market, or do we need to address all of these simultaneously?
We really need to address all of them simultaneously. I mean, rates seem to be coming down somewhat. They've stopped going up the way that they were last year and this year, and so that may bring relief for certain segments of the market, but just as it may increase supply, demand might increase at the same time, and so if it increases as much or more as supply, that may not be as much of a help as one might hope. So it really requires action on all levels.
So is there a reason for optimism as we look toward 2024 and into the new year? In the short term, are there things we're going to see that you think will make a concrete difference?
Well, I think there's reason for optimism in that a lot more people are aware of it, and so there are a lot of good conversations happening at both the state and local level, and so a lot more activity in the legislature is centered on housing than was true a couple of years ago, and certainly more towns and cities have stakeholders who are recognizing the need for housing and having good conversations about lowering regulatory barriers, allowing the market to meet demand. But you asked me about the short term, and in the short term it's going to continue to be really difficult for some time. That supply-demand mismatch and the difference between the demographics and needs of New Hampshire's population and our existing housing stock is not going to change overnight.
Yeah, and what do you hear from employers, or what is your message to employers? I mean, I've heard of instances at New Hampshire hospitals saying they've had folks like anesthesiologists. These are high-paying positions, that they could afford housing, but they can't find it near the hospital, so they actually accept the job and then end up turning it down because of the fact that they can't find housing to match their family's needs. What is the message that both you're hearing from employers and then also that you're sending to employers?
Well, we hear exactly that kind of story from employers at sort of all levels in terms of whether it's an anesthesiologist or an hourly service industry worker who's struggling to, they can take the job, they're qualified, but they can't find the housing nearby. So we hear more employers with an interest in getting involved, and we encourage that and love to see both, our partners at the Business and Industry Association and a lot of local chambers have gotten involved at the State House talking about legislation that can improve the situation. But even at the local level, if there are employers that can show up at their local planning and zoning board meetings when a new housing development is proposed and saying, this is necessary so that we can have workers to grow or sustain our business, that makes a big difference.
Is there a federal role here? Is this really about local municipalities and about state government and those two working together, or would you like to see, or is there action that could be seen on the federal level that would really make a difference?
I think the most important thing that the federal government can do is continue to fund the programs that help the most vulnerable and people on a fixed income and things like that. New Hampshire and other public housing authorities across the state administer the Housing Choice Voucher program that helps largely elderly or people with a disability afford their rent, and continuing to stay open happen and fund that Housing Choice Voucher program, continuing to fully fund other HUD programs that allow for the creation of housing for people with special needs and supportive housing needs is really critical to affect those who are kind of lower on the income spectrum and most affected by the crisis that we're experiencing.
And to that end, Rob, we saw a lot of the pandemic funding has now dried up. What effect is that having here in the Granite State?
Well, it's it's hard to tell exactly, but certainly as we see that relief expire, we've seen an increase in unsheltered homelessness over the past year, and so we haven't seen a dramatic increase in foreclosures, but the Homeowner Assistance Fund hasn't run out of money yet, so that may still be in our future.
And when you look at the landscape, obviously, voters, Granite Staters are saying this is the #1 issue here in the state. Compare it to our neighbors and then nationally. Are we unique in this challenge, or are we just like everybody else in how we're experiencing this?
We're not unique, but you might not want to be in the company that we seem to be keeping, because we do have a particularly difficult regulatory environment, especially at the local level, and so that makes it harder for builders to meet the market demand. And so states and cities that have not been as aggressive about local zoning regulation seem to have an easier time with that, and so housing costs have not increased in those faster growing Sunbelt cities and certain other areas the way that they have in the Northeast, California, New York, places like that. And so that's kind of the company we keep, and again, that's not usually how we like to identify ourselves here in New Hampshire.
So as we look out, let's say 12 months from now, 24 months from now, do you still expect to see affordable housing as the state's #1, 2, 3 top issues when we take these surveys?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. As I said, that underlying fundamental dynamic of a mismatch between supply and demand is not going to change overnight. And so while we're very encouraged by the conversations happening in the legislature and at the local level, they're not going to make an immediate impact.
All right, and we'll keep coming to you to have this conversation. Rob, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Steve.